Mind Earth. A breaking news amendment to episodes 7, 8, 9, and 10. I always felt the universe had a funny way of revealing itself, almost directly on the heels of the Mind Earth's video release of a series of episodes on large stone circular structures, gold leaching tanks, and mined ore processing plants, comes the announcement of some profound archaeological news. Stonehenge, possibly one of the most well-known and one of the most iconic ancient megalithic structures in the world, has made headlines yet again.
Stonehenge. In normal times, it's one of the most popular tourist destinations in the UK. A must-see site for travellers to the south of England. These iconic stones, some dragged here all the way from the Preseli Hills of South Wales, 240 kilometres away. Others from the Marlborough Downs, 40 kilometres to the north, have awed visitors for thousands of years. From Roman soldiers to 19th century antiquarians. Yet really, the famous Henge monument here is just one amongst many. The entire Stonehenge landscape is a sacred one. The famous blue and sarsen stones here being just one example of a complex series of structures and monuments crisscrossing the Salisbury Plains. Some much more difficult to fathom than others, either due to the construction methods used to make them, often in wood, or like nearby Avebury because of their immense size. Now, in 2020, using modern archaeological techniques, a new monument has been located. A series of massive holes, stretching for 2 kilometres. Once containing, who knows what. Astonishingly, it's being hailed by experts as the largest ever found in Britain. Let's take a look.
There are many theories about this place, but no one really knows. Stonehenge's mystery is its power. This was how the summer solstice looked in 2018. Sadly, this year it was overcast, and anyway, the crowds were kept away by COVID. Nearby at Durrington Walls, archaeologists using ground scanners have now found a mile-wide circle of shafts. It's the outer circle here, and they hope it's going to unlock more secrets. Scientists from several British universities are involved. They believe the new digs will tell us a lot more about our ancestors. Simon Viger, 5 News, Stonehenge.
Archaeologists, led by a team from the University of Bradford, have made a major discovery close to Stonehenge. The International Consortium, part of the Stonehenge Hidden Landscape Project, found evidence of a 2-kilometre wide ring of prehistoric pits. The pits are 10 meters across and 5 meters deep and have been carbon dated to 2500 BC. Professor Vince Gaffney said it was extraordinary such a major find had been made so close to Stonehenge.
It's unique, it's unprecedented, and we had not imagined that that structures of this scale existed even around Stonehenge, which is one of the best studied archaeological landscapes in the world.
It is not by any means our intention to sound condescending, Professor, but unique, unprecedented. Could not imagine that structures of this scale existed? Maybe it's just a sales job. Or maybe the professor and his team really don't know. But there are ancient megalithic pits like this all over the planet. And we don't have to go too far to find them. Cahergall is a stone ring fort, a national monument located in County Kerry, Ireland. This is a circular stone ring fort of internal diameter 25 meters, with outer walls 4 meters high and 5 meters thick. Then there's the fort of Dun Angus, perched at the edge of a 100-foot sheer cliff on the southwest side of Innismore in the Aran Islands. Is this site too unprecedented and unique? The width enclosed by the walls here well surpasses the 10 meters of the newly found Stonehenge pits. And there are other forts on the island. Dun Egon Tenancha. The stone fort measures 26 meters of internal diameter. The walls are up to 4-5 meters thick. It must be noted that no structures on this island have ever been excavated. There may well be much more to these structures than is apparent. Some excavations have been more thorough than others, like here at the Cannibwale Stone Fort. Discovered here are underground tunnels and passages leading out of the bottom of the enclosures. They still insist on calling these structures houses, and the tunnels they have called souterrains. If these were gold leaching tanks, the souterrains would make sense. They would provide drainage from the tanks. Not according to this artist. It seems like these children are climbing down into the dark tunnel, squeezing through a small gap in the floor to find Mom and Sister sitting in the dark chamber below. My goodness, this is the stuff of nightmares. It could be argued that we here at Mind Earth are guilty of confirmation bias, but our premise does seem to fit, and at least we're not ending up with our families in a deep, dark hole underneath our homes. There are literally thousands of known sites like this all throughout Ireland and the United Kingdom. To say the discoveries near Stonehenge were unique and unprecedented was perhaps a bit out of hand. The discoveries of the pits are phenomenal. The added cachet of being attached to the crown jewel of Stonehenge will hopefully bring much needed attention and scrutiny to the truth of what these structures actually are, and lead us to an understanding of our true past.
"10,000 years ago, the Salisbury Plain, like almost all of Britain, was coated in a thick layer of forest. Even in those early days, however, some sort of ritual activity may have been carried out here by Mesolithic hunter-gatherers. Ancient post holes dating to this long bygone era having been found in the Stonehenge car park. Soon, however, the nomadic lifestyle of these people would come to an end, as an entirely new people and new way of life arrived on the island. Sometime just after 4000 BC, a great causewayed enclosure was constructed here. Similar to others found all over Northern Europe, as well as numerous long barrows throughout the surrounding countryside. A precursor to a flurry of construction activity that would follow. Perhaps a claim on the land by incoming people from across the sea, having their genetic roots in far-off Anatolia, what is now Turkey.
Genetic roots from far-off Anatolia? Turkey? Who were these new inhabitants? According to this, that would have these people leaving Turkey prior to 10,000 BC. Is there evidence of a people back in Turkey prior to 10,000 BC? Let's jump on Google Earth and fly over to Anatolia, or Turkey today. And then we'll zoom into a place called Göbekli Tepe. 6 miles from Urfa, an ancient city in eastern Turkey, one of the most startling archaeological discoveries of our time has been made. Massive carved stone about 11,000 years old is said to have been arranged by prehistoric people who had not yet developed metal tools or even pottery. These megaliths predate Stonehenge by some 6,000 years, and archaeologists are convinced it's the site of the world's oldest temple. World's oldest? Possibly. World's oldest temple remains to be seen. Temples, tombs, dwellings. Why do archaeologists continue to get stuck in the mindset of these limiting choices? It seems evident that these large stone circular structures have been designed with intent, engineered with purpose. The size of the stones, the precision of the craftsmanship. These are structures that would be extremely difficult to reproduce today. These sites are 2,130 miles and 6,000 years apart, and yet share an uncanny resemblance. Could this just be a coincidence? Or could it be that the same builders were both here in Turkey and later in England? Are these temples, ceremonial structures, or are they more? Could these ancient sites be the remnants of gold production facilities, including ore processing tanks? Mind Earth will continue to investigate. Great Zimbabwe is a ruined city in the southeastern hills of Zimbabwe, near Lake Mitrukwi and the town of Masvingo. It was the capital of the Kingdom of Zimbabwe during the country's late Iron Age. Construction of the city began in the 11th century and continued until it was abandoned in the 15th century. The edifices were erected by the ancestral Shona. The stone city spans an area of 7.2 square kilometers, which, at its peak, could have housed up to 18,000 people. Great Zimbabwe is believed to have served as a royal palace for the local monarch. As such, it would be used as a seat of political power. Among the edifice's most prominent features were its walls, some of which were over 5 meters high, and they were constructed without mortar, dry stone. Eventually, the city was abandoned and fell into ruin. The word great distinguishes the site from many hundreds of small ruins, now known as Zimbabwe's, spread across the Zimbabwe Highveld. There are 200 such sites in South Africa. But this one, Great Zimbabwe, is one of the biggest. Unique, unprecedented, unexpected. This is just another example of a big, huge stone wall construction somewhere on our planet. Was this a housing complex? Or is it something more with these high wall, stone, cylindrical structures? Does it have anything to do with mining or ore processing? Mind Earth continues its investigation. The Fujian tulu are Chinese rural dwellings, unique to the Hakka in the mountains areas in southern Fujian, China. They are mostly built between the 12th and 20th centuries. A tulu is an usually large, enclosed and fortified earth building with very thick, load-bearing rammed earth walls between 3 and 5 stories high and can house up to 800 people. Smaller interior buildings are often enclosed by these huge peripheral walls which can contain storehouses, wells, and living areas, the whole structure resembling a fortified city. The fortified outer structures are formed by compacting earth mixed with stone, bamboo, wood, and other readily available materials to form walls up to 6 feet thick. The result is a well-lit, well-ventilated, windproof, and earthquake-proof building. Tulus usually have only one main gate, guarded by a thick, reinforced door. The top levels of the earth building have small gun holes for defensive purposes. I'd never heard of these Fujian tulus until I typed in large stone circular structures for this video, and these images appeared. I don't know too much more about them, other than what I've just said and the images I've seen. However, they stood out as peculiar. They're strange buildings, and they do have the look of known present-day tanks. They also appear in a region of this country that is quite heavily terraced. Could this area have been strip-mined and processed in these structures before having them turned into large condominium-like dwellings? They're also in a region of China known for its gold extraction. I wonder how many Mind Earth criteria we could put to these if challenged. I was hesitant to include the images, but something about them and their story doesn't feel right. They just seemed rather odd to me, so I thought I'd include them. Comments and thoughts are welcome. It is under a very biased light that we contextualize the professor. But the question is valid. Are the structures around Stonehenge really unique, unprecedented, and unexpected? Again, whether purely coincidental or whether designed by the universe and a synchronous event, the findings near Stonehenge are anything but unique and unprecedented, at least from a Mind Earth perspective. We had just finished the landmark video miniseries containing structures of almost the exact same size and shape and historical context as those found here at Stonehenge. Is that coincidence? Or is that synchronicity? Specifically, we've been looking at the large stone circular structures of the southern US pueblos. It is in episodes 7 through 10 that we present information and make arguments that these pits or structures here in the pueblos could be gold leaching or gold settling mined ore processing tanks. If we can begin to conjure the scenario that these large stone circular structures were used as mining tanks, it is not difficult to extrapolate and suggest that the pits around the Durrington walls are in fact remnants of a massive gold processing plant. The first season of Mind Earth has been about Peru. Admittedly, it's not really the starting point of this story, nor is it the end, but it was a good place to begin. As we begin to make our way out of Peru, we are faced with the breadth and scope of what we are dealing with. We've done a good job here, but there is much more to be discovered. This bonus video affords us a nice opportunity to have a look at something special before we leave. Corel. Buried in the sands for thousands of years on Peru's western coastline, Corel is recorded as having been rediscovered by an American historian, Paul Cusack, in 1948. That's only 70 years ago, but it received little attention at the time because it appeared to lack many typical artifacts that were sought at archaeological sites throughout the Andes. Then, in 1975, the Peruvian architect Carlos Williams made a detailed record of most of the archaeological sites of the valley, amongst which he recorded Corel. But other than a handful of singular academic endeavors, this 4,000 to 4,600-year-old city in the Peruvian desert, with evidence that suggests was a thriving metropolis, with elaborate complexes of temples and amphitheaters and ornate homes, has gone largely unnoticed or remains largely unstudied. What is the story here? Perhaps the river will offer a suggestion to the answer. High above Corel in the headwaters of the mountains, it looks as if there's been a systematic gouging of the landscape. This can be attributed to glaciation, but nevertheless, it is an interesting landform feature. Littering again at periodic intervals as we go down the stream are stone-walled circular enclosures. Could this area have been mined in the past? Could Corel be the culminating processing plant at the end of this river? This site is nothing short of spectacular, and yet, in a land with so many ancient ruins, it almost goes by unnoticed. We will keep an eye on the progress of the still woefully lacking present-day investigations. Just another example of large pits dating to the time the pits around Durrington Walls, near Stonehenge, were thought to have been built. If pressed to choose one location on this planet that encapsulates the essence of mined earth investigations, I may well choose this one. We will travel back to the ancient city of Jerusalem, a city where mining still occurs. A city in a landscape of terraces. A city of mysteries, a city of history. Excavations below the Western Wall, literally in the past couple of years, have revealed stone discoveries that boggle the imagination. These go right to the very heart of mined earth. This is the reason we do what we do.
So this is the same Western Wall we can see outside. It's the continuation of it. We're not standing on top of it or beneath it or on the other side of it, just along the same wall, but where it's concealed, where it's hidden. If you look over here at the bottom and with your gaze slowly climb up to the top, you will notice different kinds of construction. You're looking at two different periods. 1400 years ago, when the Muslims first came here, they find parts of the wall ruined, destroyed. They decide to renovate. These small stones over here and the larger ones above them, all the way to the top, is 1,400-year Muslim renovation. But from here and all the way down to the valley, we're talking about 4 stories beneath us, this beautiful symmetric shaped stone with this nice frame around it, aligned so neatly one near each other and one on top of the other, with no cement in between to glue the stones together. We call this dry construction, kind of like Lego. This is 2,000-year-old Jewish construction. So look at me, don't follow me. I want to show you something. From here and all the way, going 40 feet along the Western Wall, 40 feet, that is longer than a bus, you're looking at the largest stone found in the Temple Mount. It is 12 feet high and 14 feet deep. It weighs close to 600 tons. That's equivalent to like I would say 200 elephants, or if you want it in a modern scale, 2 airplanes. The big jumbo jet, transatlantic 747 with the people and the luggage after shopping in Israel. That's heavy, yeah. 2 big airplanes, 1 stone, and the big question is how? How do they carve a stone like this? How do they roll it here? How do they lift it up and place it so accurately? I believe a good question deserves even a better answer. The answer is we don't know. Physicists, mathematicians, archaeologists, engineers, historians today don't know how, with the lack of technology they had 2,000 years ago, they were able to move something so big. This is a mystery, an enigma.
Even less is actually known about the stone. It is not known who built this. It is not known how they built it. It is also not known when it was built. In all of the known history, in perhaps one of the most important religious locations on the planet, there has never been mention of this stone. It's as if it's always been here, underneath history, the whole time. And the tunnels and excavations don't stop here. They go down deeper. Below Wilson's Arch is where we'll go next.
Behind me is the Western Wall. In the excavations beneath Wilson's Arch, we have exposed 8 courses of one of the most important walls in the history of Jerusalem, stones that haven't seen light for 1,700 years. We're here beneath Wilson's Arch, a large arch which supported a bridge connecting between the city to the west and the Temple Mount to the east. One of the major questions is, when was this arch that we see today, when was it built? We don't have a good answer for that yet from the excavations. What we do have is something that we didn't expect whatsoever. During the excavations, a complete surprise was exposing in the center of the excavation area a theater-like structure, the first of its kind to be exposed in Jerusalem. We know theaters or theater-like structures are mentioned in historical sources, for example in Josephus. I don't know if that's the same building that's mentioned in these historical sources, but what we have begun to uncover is the importance of the city, which had basic Roman functional structures such as theaters or theater-like complexes in Jerusalem, known as Ilia Capitolina at the time. It's possible that the building was never finished in relation to the Bar Kokhba revolt. Perhaps they began to build a structure, the Bar Kokhba revolt erupts, and they leave the structure unfinished, not returning to it.
Jerusalem is a mined earth dream. Terraces, ancient mythology, megalithic masonry, and now large circular stone structures buried beneath the gates of the ancient city. A surprise to most. However, Jerusalem is described as the second mission control for the Annunaki spaceports after the first mission control near Urudu was wiped out by the floods. The discoveries at Stonehenge are archaeological big news. To mined earth, it is doubly significant, as it comes almost directly on the heels of a video produced discussing these very structures. This has been a mined earth bonus news exclusive. After introducing tulus in this bonus video, I had to know more. I spent the night researching and investigating what I felt was an anomaly, something strange, and something worthy of attention. It turned out to pay dividends. At the end of the night, most of the web pages were still open. I thought it'd be interesting to hit record and walk you through the process used to develop mined earth ideas. This one was more fruitful than most, as I hit pay dirt on a couple of very interesting topics. Additional bonus features: a recorded walkthrough of the mined earth investigation process. Let's turn on the OBS software and take a look at what I actually did that night after looking at these structures in China. So what you're looking at here is a whole whack of opened up websites. And I kind of go to fool around and to see what's going on. I flip from one thing to the other and I'm able to get a sort of an overall picture and sense of what may be happening there. And so what I'm looking at now is this virtual globetrotting website that I found that had images of all these tulus in them. And so if I click these tulus, I would get a Google Maps picture of it. If I clicked what's here, I'm going to get the coordinates for this map image. And I've highlighted them over here just because it was easier. What I could do is then take these coordinates and I go back to my Google Earth Pro software and I could insert a pin. This is what I figured out. And the coordinates with them. I don't think I'm going to get it here. I think I made a mistake. But once I get the pin in and once I get the coordinate set, then it'll put a pin or a coordinate exactly where that image was taken. Huge, powerful way to find things on both Google Maps and now here on Google Earth. And I like to use the Google Earth, and I have all my images on there, and I have pins and different things on it. It's a remarkable tool. So here I'm trying to figure it out. I'm trying to get fancy and find a way that I can maybe do it a little bit faster without actually having to copy paste everything. But So I copy paste. Did I get it here? I got it. And so what you're looking at here is an untitled pin. And I'm trying to find it, I have a feeling it's over here somewhere. So I click on the pin itself, and it brings me right to it. And here's where I put it on. And it turns out this website that I just found put on this tulu twice. But anyway, never mind. That's kind of how I find these on Google Earth. So there's a feature using coordinates like this. Powerful. Then I started looking for what's going on around here. So I opened up and I was looking at Zijin Gold. Zijin Gold, and they're a company, the largest gold mining company in China. And their headquarters for their main gold mining operation, guess what? Is just up the valley. So is there gold in this area? Now here's where it first told me it was. One of the websites. The Zijing websites, that's where the coordinates it gave me. I went to another environmental website where they had listed Zijing as being environmentally irresponsible, and they actually gave me the correct coordinates, and there's the Zijing gold mine just up the road from all these tuluses that I marked in red, which we'll see in a moment. Also down the road, somewhere around here, is going to be the refining factory. So I went on the web, found these coordinates for the refining factory, and so that's kind of where the largest gold mining company in the world and the largest gold mine in China are here. There is gold in this area. I went further and I said, I'm looking at Zijing. They have a silver mine in here as well, and they got their smeltery right here, headquarters in Fujian province. So that was interesting. Here's what I ended up doing. There were so many of these tuluses that at first I started marking their images using the website, and then I just started going up and down the valleys. And as I went up and down the valleys, I would click on a pin and I would highlight different areas and say, here's a pin. I'm not even going to put a name. I just want to see where it is. And I click it, and there's a tulu. So as I go up and down the valleys, I start seeing patterns, and I start seeing where are these tulus, and they're all over this area. They're all over this area. And it looks like they're going up these roadways or these yellow stripped passageways all through these mountains. But it's only in this area. As I went a little bit further to the next province, to the west, there was none. And as I went further to the east, and I tried to look down some of the valleys over here in the east, there was none. So they're very confined to a very specific area of China. And the region is very interesting when you sort of go to look at it. Here's some other things that I just found, anomalies in the landscape. This definitely is a mine. And if I follow what probably is a conveyor belt over to this thing, I just about fell out of my seat when I looked at this. I have no idea. There's some giant tanks, but this looks like a giant cylinder or some... I don't know what the heck's going on here. This is huge. So I'm playing around here with Google Earth, and I'm trying to get another look at this processing plant. I'm guessing. Where is it now? Here we go. So this is the kind of thing that I do, and I circled it here in the blue. I'm trying to take a look at this thing. This is bizarre. I've never seen anything like this. But here it is, right up the road from these tulus that I thought were anomalies. Here's some giant tanks. These are big tanks. Those look like trucks. Maybe they're, I don't know if they're 18 wheels, but they're vehicles of some sort. And then we got these large, look like tubes or structures. Maybe there's another way. I'm not sure what's going on up there. But there it is, something very interesting and definitely some sort of industrial center. And it looks like it's attached to that open pit mine across the valley. So I see these things. Just messing around, I go back to the view. Let's go back up, spin it around. So this is what I was doing that night. Here's just a bonus video. How do I find things? How do I make connections? And I go and I look and I fiddle around and I say, what's happening here? I put pins on the map. I look up and down valleys. I look for anomalies in the landscape. My guess is that they're going to start building these pits all the way around this facility, and you can kind of see this whole area is very dark green, has not been sort of tapped in. Here looks like another tulu, and it's been sort of stripped around. The area around it is not very forested, and it looks like it's been terraced. So here's a series of tulus going up this carved out or stripped out valley. There's the gold mine. What else was I doing? Just playing around, trying to look for things that are happening. Bonus video.
Haven't played Crossout before? Now is the time. Crossout is a free action-packed game.
Haka. Interesting that the Haka, the Australian Haka, Hugakde, I'm not sure what they say, but the Haka popped up when I typed in Chinese Haka. And here's the Haka people, or the Haka culture, that live in these tulus in the Fujian province. And there's stuff about them. So I was looking at the history and culture of the
about the
people.
sky.
And so they have some of these tuluses that are open, apparently. There are only a few, and you can buy tickets like a tourist, and you go in and see these things. So not all of them, but there are a few. Here's your ticket, you come in. So they have these sort of touristy setups where you can go see the tulus. I'm always weary of this. It's interesting for sure, but is this really what's happening in all of the other tulus, or is this sort of the polished up version of what's going on? Regardless, we get to take a look inside, and we can see the housing and the structures and how it works, and it's very interesting. So I'm playing around, checking out videos, and then this particular one popped up. And I'm just going to take a look at it just to show you what happens and where you go as this is going on. So again, what you're looking at is the process through which I sort of do this research. It's a very organic method of trying to gather information, and I kind of flip from one website to another. And you can see the number of websites that are open. And what I continuously do is I flip back and forth. But this was very interesting. This video popped up. 3,000 years ago, a lost civilization. So this is part of the mythology of the area. Started watching it. It was kind of what happened.
These are not typical of Bronze Age China. The much bigger, supposedly more powerful Shang dynasty rarely made masks, and when they did, it was just for decoration. These are the products of belief, symbols of power. Who are you? Primal and benevolent, with eyes that penetrate. When they discovered Sanxingdui, they found close to 60 of these incredible bronze heads. They're over 3,000 years old, and yet they're so intricately cast. But I think probably the most striking feature of these heads are the eyes and the noses. They look neither Chinese nor do they look Western. Some people even say they look alien, but probably the most impressive of these bronze heads were the ones that they found covered in gold leaf.
So now you can well imagine this video has my attention. This is following these Tulus down these valleys. Gold is all around. Now there's a 3,000-year-old lost civilization. Bronze heads covered with gold. What's going on? So again, this is the process I take. I'm watching these videos. I'm trying to piece it all together. Looking at these statues, these bronze statues with their ears, their eyes. I'm thinking back to Enki. I'm thinking back to the Sumerians. Meanwhile, I've got images of tanks open. And I'm looking at images of tanks and industrial tanks, gold leaching tanks. And seeing how they compare to some of the Tulus that I've seen in the area. Here's I think the one I just flipped by was an image of a gold deposit. So here's a known or an upcoming gold deposit in the Fujian province. And so I was taking a look at some of these research type papers of the area. So here's what they did in this particular research paper. They gave the coordinates of this gold, known gold ore deposits in Fujian province. This is where they're going to be going next. I took these coordinates and I put them onto Google Earth. It's not the same square that I see in the research paper, but this is the area, and right in the center, that's where they're going next. That's the gold deposits that we are seeing in this image. There they are. They're highlighted, and I can see there's a bunch of them right in this area, right in the center of this square or rectangle, and that's what we're looking at. So my guess, I'm going to see if I can get this yellow filter off here. And there we go. Got it. And we'll take a look around. So my guess is that it's this big hill in the middle here. It looks like it's dark green. This looks like a part that has not been scraped or excavated or terraced yet. And that's probably where they're going to go next. That's where this next gold mine is going to be. No doubt. So this is kind of what we do. And we play around with these ideas. So you got present day gold, you got past gold mines, you got 3,000-year-old gold bronze heads coming out of the ground that look like aliens. You got these Tuluses that look like tanks. This is just playing around one night on the computer and seeing what I can find. And as you start putting these together with the lens of Mind Earth, this story starts emerging. So it's popping up, and you start to see these connections, and you wonder, boy, is this really happening? Is this really true? Could this be true? And that's kind of the premise that we work under. So I'm looking at these Tuluses, and you start thinking, how does this story fit together? Perhaps it was these valleys have been mined already, and these Tuluses were used as processing tanks later then to be housed. But that's kind of what we do. Now, this was interesting. As I started looking at these images, I saw these cuts going across. These look like they're just recent. These cuts going across the landscape. Some of these Tuluses have been there, they say 12th century, hundreds of years. But these ones look fresh. That one looks like a fresh cut, and I've marked it in blue there. Some of these look fresh. Here's another one. And it looks like this has been freshly cut out of the forest. You can see a line going across. This is real time. I didn't expect this. But what I think I'm seeing is is potentially what I think I'm seeing is that they're following these these gold or at least mineral veins across the landscape and just mining the veins. This isn't open pit mining. This is something that I'm calling vein mining. It looks like an efficient way of getting at this gold. So this is what they've been doing for the last couple hundred years, I'm guessing. This is my theory at this point. They've built these two loose structures up the valleys. It looks like they've carved out and terraced all this land around them. They've gone up the valley. And now what they're doing is they're going back and they're with more sophisticated geological techniques to find the gold. They're finding these veins and they're hitting these veins specifically. Vein mining now. So you can kind of see this. I had open. I was trying to find out where is Fujian province. I wasn't sure. Back to some of the earlier. This is just as I started making this video. This was the terraced land in Ireland. The island out in the middle of on the way out into the middle of the Atlantic, just out of Ireland. I've put together these images. Here's a website that I had up earlier. This is great. This is it looks like the new town hall or the new government structure for Zimbabwe. And it's a big round stone circular structure, and I do not think this is lost on them. I think this is done intentionally, and I think it's a nod to the past and the great Zimbabwe stone circles. Really interesting stuff. It's kind of as in the past, as in the future, there's kind of like a connection here between the past and present with their design features. So you can kind of see, as I'm looking through these images, I've got images of present-day Zimbabwe mixed in, and then you're flying around with past, the great Zimbabwe, and some of the stone features there. Thousands of years old. Who built these? And this is all coming from the news in the UK about Stonehenge and the circular pits that they're finding there. So we ask questions, we start going, and we start using this lens, and we come across these things. I wonder what, she's planting here. These are just images that we got going on, farmland. And I wonder, are these food crops with cyanide in them? This is kind of where we go with these. And I start using the Mind Earth criteria to try to look around. I see images popping up of the local structures. This is in Zimbabwe, and I see the round circular stone structures there. Are they dwellings? Are they original dwellings? We've gone through that whole thing. So these images keep popping up, and this was Zimbabwe. So I'm just playing around at this point. I'm just playing around with Zimbabwe. And now I went from China, and now I'm flipped over to Zimbabwe, and I started looking at these images. And this is real time. This is as I was going along, I'm thinking, well, no, this is interesting. What's Zimbabwe? I haven't really looked carefully at Zimbabwe. I'm on a roll now. I've just identified sort of a new whole form of mining, which I think I did, called vein mining. I've looked at these Tuluses. I've looked at China. I've found a 3,000-year-old lost civilization. These are all connected to the premise that the earth has been mined. Just messing around with Zimbabwe. And what do you find here? So I was just trying to find it and correlate it back to the Google Earth and Google Earth Pro. And I'm saying, there's the gold mines in Zimbabwe. And where are they on the map? And, or where is Great Zimbabwe on the map? So I was saying, where's Great Zimbabwe on this map in Google Earth? Because we saw a big, large stone circular structure there, eclipsing the size of the ones they found in UK. And so I zoom in, and there's Great Zimbabwe. And you can see there's some stone circular structures there. And there's a big one down here. Those are the one I think that I have earlier in the video. And, you look carefully. You got these pictures that you can click in and zoom in on, and you start looking at the stonework. This is dry fit stonework. It's there's no mortar. It's impressive. It's beyond remarkable that how they built these walls. These stones are placed so perfectly, and you can kind of take a look. You know, there's not a gap in them. They're not just piled up. They're placed with precision. These are master builders, or someone took an awful long time to put these in the right place to get these giant walls, and that's sitting there with no real explanation as to who did it and how they may have done it. So this is Great Zimbabwe, and you know, you kind of look at the landscape and you say, let's take a look and see where Zimbabwe is, and when you look, you can see Zimbabwe. It's its own. It's almost like it's got its own natural boundary around it. And anywhere you go in Zimbabwe, you're going to find that it's been terraced, that there's stone walls everywhere. This has been manipulated and engineered. The whole country looks like this. And you start to ask, what's going on here? So you think, well, maybe that's just an anomaly in this part of Zimbabwe, you know, and I'm just saying, let's go anywhere. I'm just trying, you know, here's the spot. Go zoom in, what do you see? You see the same thing, and the more you look, the more you see it's been stone walls, it's got terraces, it's got circular structures, it's phenomenal. It's been worked and engineered, and the whole country looks like this. You know, I come back to Ann Critchener, and we'd just written her a letter, actually, again, trying to get her input on this. Hopefully she'll respond, but, you know, and then I see another anomaly down here. What's going on here in northern, I think it's Botswana. And, you know, you investigate and you look and you start saying, what is this? What's going on here? This looks interesting. And how does it fit? Or what's happening here? That's kind of what you do. And so I was playing around and going, Zimbabwe. And then I said, whoa, what's this? This does not look natural. And you zoom in and you kind of say, what's going on here? Not sure what we're looking at there. It looks like some water, but these big, giant scrapes across the landscape. Maybe glacier action, but they sure look interesting. They big scrapes across the landscape. I don't know what's going on there. And you see some more here. They look like big gouges out of the country. And they've all been stone-walled, terraced, or stone walls built all over them. There's everywhere you go. These things have been built. Someone built them. There's an awful lot of them. For what purpose? Is it farming? You know, I get fascinated. I get stuck here. So this is a mind earth get stuck thing. I probably should have said at the beginning if you want to pop through this, but here's Zimbabwe. I found a photo on Google Earth and I click it and go, my goodness, Zimbabwe, what is going on in this country? I don't even know what to say about that picture. Giant boulder rock formation just sitting in the middle of the country. This big terraced, huge country. So you start asking, could the whole thing have been mined? Could this all have been mined in the past? Could all of Zimbabwe have been processed like this? And these are the questions that Mind Earth delves into. And these are upcoming episodes. This is a bonus feature that kind of shows how I go about thinking about these things. And I see some rivers and they look like they've been stone-walled terraces. Now I'm going back to the river. Oh my goodness. So here's here's some lakes and some water. If you're going to mine gold, you need water. And so you start looking, well, what's going on up here, you know? I've never really looked at Zimbabwe at this point, so I'm just messing around with Google Earth, and you come across these ideas and you think, there's Zimbabwe, and I can't remember what I'm even going to write here. You know, like, type something in. Victoria Falls. Oh yeah, that's in Zimbabwe. I've never really looked at Victoria Falls until this moment. And again, I started going, oh, there's a golf course. Hey, Michelle, you can't go too far off without finding a golf course on some important part of our past, apparently. So that might be interesting to go look and see what's under that golf course right at Victoria Falls. But you can, you know, I'm just messing around. It's the whole landscape looks like this. These look interesting. So I went to Victoria Falls and I started saying, what's going on here? What's happening in Victoria Falls? I got a great big wide river falling over this cliff and then collecting into a canyon, a big zigzag canyon. Look at this thing. So here's what happens at Victoria Falls. This wide river comes down, falls into this chasm, and then it's collected, this whole long chasm, which is a kilometer, maybe 1.5 kilometers long, I think 1.7, this big channel, and it's all collected, runs down into this, it comes down here, down this chute, not out there, it stops there. So it goes to this canyon, comes down this chute, and it collects, and it goes down the river, and you can kind of see where it goes. This is the Zambezi. This is the first time I'm looking at it. I see that it comes down, and I'm just following it along, just messing around. This time I'm just recording, actually. I don't normally record these things, and I just kind of look, but I thought, I'm recording, I'll show you what I'm thinking. And I'm going down this river, and all of a sudden this wide, shallow river turns into this deep channel. It looks like it's carved through this rock. And it's carved right across this whole area. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I'm still looking at the river, and I am. And it looks like it's deep carved through this rock over towards the northern part of Zimbabwe. And now I've got a massive lake fed by the Zambezi River. Then I thought, well, let's follow it up to its source. Where's this water coming from? And so you look at these, it looks like it's coming from, or a good part of it anyway, going back up the Zambezi. And it looks like it's coming from these mountains in Angola. So somehow all the water that's going to be rained and floods in this part of Africa, and it turns out that's exactly where it does rain most of the time because of the cold currents and the warm currents meeting in Angola. It comes across the continent, past Victoria Falls, through these chasms, all the way down across and to Zimbabwe. It wasn't always like this. The river didn't always go in this direction. At some point in its history, it did change directions, and there's geological explanations for it, of course. But it's interesting, and it looks like something we should investigate. How does a river do this? This is phenomenal. I took off the yellow color just because I thought it distracted. And I'm looking at this for the first time going, could this have been carved out to get the water across the continent over to these lakes in order to mine Zimbabwe in the past? Holy mackerel. And you start thinking, I think I've seen this kind of engineering going on around Lake Titicaca. I think I've seen it going on around the Jordan Valley. I think I've seen this kind of engineering happening in different spots of the world, and you start to think of the scope of what we may be looking at here. And so there's a quick glimpse at the process. Don't go to Madagascar, you'll be stuck there for hours. So that's kind of a glimpse into the organic process that we investigate and research Mined Earth, where we look at the premise that our planet, or a good portion of it, has at some point in the ancient past been mined. I truly encourage everyone to download and explore Google Earth Pro. Unleash the Mined Earth criteria and see what you can find. Hope you enjoyed.